Hello. So today we will be seeing how to use the FM Bench Orchestrator repository for benchmarking large language models using FM Bench. Now, the FM Bench Orchestrator is a companion repository to FM Bench, and it makes it really simple to run FM Bench for benchmarking models, whether on Amazon EC2, on SageMaker, and Bedrock. What it does is that it takes away the step about creating a CloudFormation template or creating SageMaker notebooks, creating S3 buckets, EC2 VMs, etc., on which the benchmarking has to run. The orchestrator is now the tool that takes care of all of that. You just provide the orchestrator a config file and say, hey, I want to benchmark on these EC2 instances. Then the orchestrator will take care of creating those EC2 instances, installing Conda environment, downloading model servers, installing FM Bench, running FM Bench, and then downloading the results. The same can be done for benchmarking models on SageMaker as well as Bedrock. So effectively, what we are saying now is that the orchestrator is the standard way for using FM Bench. Let's see it in action right now. So now the first step to use the orchestrator, or rather the prerequisite, is that we need to have an IAM role which has the requisite permissions for running the orchestrator and letting it do what it needs to do in terms of either creating EC2 machines or invoking models on SageMaker on Bedrock. The permissions for doing that, the IAM role permissions for doing that, are actually provided in this markdown file, this iam.md file, which is a part of the orchestrator repository. So you can create a new IAM role. Typically, we would like to call it FM Bench-Orchestrator and provided the permissions listed here, along with the trust policies and some managed permissions for calling SageMaker and Bedrock. Now, once that is done, the only other thing that is required is to create the EC2 machine on which the FM Bench Orchestrator is running, and then the orchestrator takes care of the rest. Now, of course, you need to have the service quota for launching the EC2 instances on which you would be doing benchmarking. So that is something that you need to take care of. Now, the way the orchestrator works is that it comes with, much like the FM Bench, it has a set of config files, and these config files are actually much simpler than the FM Bench config files. So we'll take a look at those momentarily, but let's get started with first creating the orchestrator VM and then following the steps that are listed in the README file. Now I go to my EC2 menu over here. Now I already have an orchestrator machine, but for the purpose of this demo, let me create a new one so that we can just walk through all the steps one time. I already have a machine. I'll call it FM Bench Orchestrator -2. Now this is a Ubuntu machine, so I'll select that. Okay, this default AMI is okay. The default Ubuntu AMI is okay. We typically want to create a T3 XLarge instance. Let's do that. The T3 XLarge, I can select an existing key pair that I have. So I'll do that. All these settings are default. I can increase the storage to 100 GB. And then finally, I want to use an IAM role that has requisite set of permissions. Now, I already created an FM Bench Orchestrator role with the IAM permissions that we were reviewing here. So this is already done. So I'm just going to use the orchestrator role and then just say launch instance. Now this will launch an instance in a minute or so, and then I can SSH into that instance and proceed from there. Let's see. All right, so my newly created instance FM Bench Orchestrator -2 is initializing right now. I do have a public IPv4 for that now. So I'll SSH into that instance. Let me do that using my VS Code. Okay, so this is my VS Code connected to the EC2 instance that we just launched. Let's open a folder here. So just open the home directory. Okay. Open a terminal. This is a Linux terminal. All right, so this is basically empty. There is nothing over here, which is totally fine. That's what we expected. Now, let's follow the steps in the README file. So we'll install Conda, clone the repository, create a new Conda environment for running the orchestrator, install requirements, install the packages in requirements.txt, and then go from there. So the first step is to install Miniconda. Let's do that. Okay. Clone the repository. Okay, once that is done. Okay, so that is done. Clone the repository. So this clones the FM Bench Orchestrator repository. So we have that here. We'll install a Conda environment for running the orchestrator. This is a Python 3.11 environment. Now, as it is running, let me walk you through the config files for the orchestrator. So one of the simplest config files here is the EC2.yaml file. What it does is that it has a name. All the results will be downloaded in a folder. In this particular case, this is a file for Llama 3 8B on G6E instances. And this is the default configuration of the EC2 machines that it is going to launch. So we are going to benchmark the Llama 3 8B model on two G6E instances, a G6E 2x large and a G6E 4x large. Now, these are FM Bench config files, which are downloaded directly from the FM Bench repository. So we can follow these links into the FM Bench repository, FM Bench configs folder on GitHub. So it will download those files from there, run one benchmarking on G6E 2x large, run another benchmarking on G6E 4x large. And the way it will run that benchmarking, the configuration that it will use for benchmarking is all contained in these files. These files, again, come from the FM Bench repository. It will automatically use the region in which the orchestrator is running, although you could manually change this region. Let's say I'm running in US East 1, but I want to benchmark something in US West 2. I can just literally type US West 2. The AMI it is going to use is a GPU AMI. So these AMIs are listed. This is the PyTorch Ubuntu GPU AMI in this particular case. And these are listed in a file called here, AMI mapping. This file you would, as soon as we can see it here, this file, well, let's see here, to reload. Let's see. All right, it should open up. Okay, so this file has a region-wise mapping of if I'm benchmarking in US East 1 on a GPU instance, then this is the AMI that I want to use. If I'm benchmarking on AWS chips like a Neuron instance, then this is the AMI I have to use. CPU instance, this is the AMI I have to use. So these AMIs have already been set here. And you would obviously replace those AMIs with a custom AMI. Anyway, so we were installing a Conda environment for running the FM Bench Orchestrator when I had to sort of just reload this machine. Not sure why that happened, but let's run that step one more time. Okay. So this should complete, and then we'll just go through the steps. So what I was saying was that there are a whole bunch of config files here that you can use. One of the simplest files is this EC2 file, which is benchmarking the Llama 3 8B model on the G6E 2x large. There is a file for SageMaker. Similarly, there is a file for Bedrock. These are all described in the README file. The structure of these files is all described in the README file and other helper documentation that is included in the README. So let's get back to completing the setup for the orchestrator. So the Conda environment is installed. We'll activate the Conda environment now. Okay, there you go. And then the only step, well, yeah, one step is, two steps are remaining. We have to install the packages that are needed by the orchestrator. So, CD into this. So I'll pip install the packages needed by the orchestrator. And once that is done, The only other step is to provide the Hugging Face token, which is used for downloading models and datasets. Now, this Hugging Face token will be uploaded to any EC2 instance that the orchestrator creates for benchmarking purposes. So we just put this Hugging Face token locally on this orchestrator instance, and it will take care of the rest of uploading it on the instances that it launches. And that is basically it. After that, we'll just be able to start benchmarking just by running this command. So let's see. Okay, so this is complete. Now I just have to copy my Hugging Face token, which I will do now. Let me pause the recording. So I have copied my Hugging Face token to this VM as per the instructions as per these instructions in the README file. And now my next step is to actually run the orchestrator, i.e. run the benchmarking. So in this case, I'm going to use this EC2.yaml file that was in the configs folder. So I'm going to run that. And that's it. It is now going to launch the EC2 instances that are listed in the config file, the G6E2X large, the G6E4X large, and then install FM Bench on these instances, install whatever other dependencies, model servers are needed on those instances. And then run FM Bench as per these config files. So that process is going to take some time. Now, these instance creations are going to start in 60 seconds. So we'll see that. And then the FM Bench installation and other dependencies like model server installation, or if you want to install Triton or VLLM, all of that is done as part of startup scripts that are uploaded to that instance. And then the FM Bench is run on those instances. Okay, so now the instance creation has started and the startup script is being launched on those instances. So I can see that in action. I can SSH into the instances that the orchestrator has created. Remember a G6E2X large and 4X large using these two commands, which we shall do. And we can also then, of course, see those instances in the EC2 console. Yes. Okay, so now I can see real-time logs from the startup script that has been launched on these instances, and I can do this for either of this instance. So now this is going to take some time, about give or take about 5 minutes for this to complete, 5 to 10 minutes for this to complete. And once that completes, it will launch the FM Bench benchmarking on those machines. Meanwhile, as it is doing that, we can go here and we should be able to see these machines on the EC2 console right there. So we see an FM Bench G6E4X large and FM Bench G6E2X large. So both those machines have been created, it says, in initializing state. And so that's where the Cloud Init script is running on these machines. And once the init script completes, it will install FM Bench and start running FM Bench on these two machines. So we'll be able to SSH on those machines and see the fmbench.log being updated on those machines. And once the run completes, we'll be able to download those machines, or rather, I should say the orchestrator will download those machines. So we'll see that in action. Let's give this a few minutes and come back to this once the startup script has been completed. So the startup script is still continuing. It will take a few more minutes. And meanwhile, you might see that the machine reboots in the middle of that. That's fine. When the machine comes up, the startup script will start again. So that is okay. And meanwhile, we can see it here if you want to see. So it's still installing some packages. I think this is installing FM Bench at this point of time. So we'll let this complete and we'll check back again in a few minutes. As you can see, it's waiting for the startup complete flag on both FM Bench G6E4X large as well as G6E2X large instance. Let's check back in a couple of minutes. Okay, so the startup script has completed, and now we are running FM Bench on these machines. We can now again SSH on these instances, and we should be able to see the FM Bench log in action. And we are now waiting for the FM Bench completed flag, which will tell the orchestrator that the runs have completed. So let's run this command in another shell so that we can see what's going on these machines. Yeah, so this is a log coming from FM Bench, and this will get updated as FM Bench proceeds and inference is starting to happen. Okay, and meanwhile, the orchestrator will keep on checking every 1 minute if the run has completed, and the config file has timeout. So like, for example, the FM bench complete timeout, which is 2400 seconds, you can increase it or decrease it depending upon your requirements. And it will expect the FM bench run on each of these machines individually to be completed in 2400 seconds. Now, keep in mind that both these runs are happening in parallel. Now, if I wanted to, let's say, simultaneously benchmark on a 12x large or any other machine also, like maybe I wanted to combine a G6 2x large benchmarking with a G5 with a P4D or P5 or what have you, then I could just simply add those lines to this config file and it would have launched all those instances, of course, service quota permitting. So meanwhile, it's just waiting for these instances to complete, and that will take another 15-20 minutes, whatever time it takes for these runs to complete. Now we can keep on watching these FM bench config files. So this is containers are downloading on one of these instances. So and we can even SSH into those instances and see what is going on. So this was the tail of the log, but we could literally SSH into these instances and see what is running. So the fmbench.log file is here. The model has been downloaded. This is the config file that is being used depending upon what we provided over here. So this is the config file that is being used, and I'm now SSH into that instance. So I can just do a tail from here, or I could do the SSH tail that we were doing previously. So this will take some time. We will check back once this run is complete, and all these results will get downloaded once the run is complete. So we'll wait for this and we'll check back in a few minutes. So checking in on our run again, this is the tail of the FM bench that we were looking at via SSH. So now that we can see, this is the inferences have started running and we get metrics out of FM bench. So this run is well and truly underway. While on the orchestrator, we're still checking every 1 minute as to if both those machines have the FM bench completed flag in place or not, which they don't. So the run is going to continue for a little bit more. So we'll check back again in a few minutes, but as you can see, all these results in the FM bench log have started collecting. So now the FM bench is almost completed. This is on one of the instances, and as this completes, this instance will get terminated. This is the FM bench orchestrator, so it's going to check every 1 minute where that instance is. This is almost done. It's almost done, and as soon as it gets done, this instance will download the results folder on the orchestrator. The orchestrator will download the result folder itself, and it will then terminate this instance. So we can see that this instance has been terminated on the orchestrator. So now that one of the instance has been terminated, the other instance is still going on. So we'll wait for that to be terminated, and then the orchestrator will download all the logs from this. So now the second instance has also completed and it has been terminated as well. All the results have been downloaded and the FM Bench Orchestrator run is done. So we can see the results in the results folder. Inside the results folder, there is a Llama 3 G6E file, which has folders for both the instances that were spawned. And inside these instances, we have the FM Bench log file that is downloaded from those instances and the results folder, which contains the result of the FM Bench run. So if I look at the report.markdown file, on preview, this is the markdown report for the FM Bench run on the G6E 2x large instance. And it is the usual FM Bench report that we expect at the end of the run. So that report is here for us. And then the same is also available for the G6E 4x large instance as well. So this is how the orchestrator worked. If there were more instances, they would have all downloaded here. Now the README file has instructions for several other options that are available on the orchestrator beyond just running the files that are packaged. How do you benchmark on EC2, benchmark on SageMaker, benchmarks for Bedrock, and then how do you modify some of the existing config files as per your needs? So all of that is described in the README file. So that was a quick demo, or rather not so quick demo, of the FM Bench Orchestrator.